Read from it.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for being here. And thank you to those who asked me to be here on this stage in the presence of greatness and so much of it. This is a wonderful night. I bring you greetings from across the sea. The news is mixed. Oh, you may have heard this. I'm sorry to tell you, they're still having tea parties over there. You know, not the proper kind, the kind where they throw tea. Only Americans could think of this, destroying a perfectly good food product to show that we are righteous and frugal. But don't worry, it's not you this time. No, King George, we're over him. We tried our own George for a while, and I won't talk about that either. I had nothing to do with it. So this is where we are. I'm just endlessly interested in character. I guess all novelists are, but in this novel, I was especially interested in national character, in how it is we get to be who we are as a nation. I've been curious my whole life about the fact that in my country, patriotism is most vocally identified with the position that you should not change anything. It's a curious position for a nation founded by revolution, if you think about it. Sometime between your George and our more recent one, the tables turned. You know, we went from being a work in progress to thinking of ourselves as a perfect finished product. Don't mess with it. You know, don't mess with my terrible health care. Let me be infirm in my patriotic glory. You know, it's so peculiar. I've just been fascinated with that, and I thought that if I went looking into the middle of the last century, around the 1940s, 1950s, the time that we now think of as the communist witch hunts, I might turn up something interesting about this sea change in how we identified ourselves as a nation. And I found a novel. It was great fun, and the novel is about many things, art and history and politics. It's also about gossip and news that masquerades as gossip, and the human eagerness to believe the very worst things we ever hear about other people, especially celebrated people. I was just interested in all of those things. So I wrote a story of a narrator who is an artist himself. He's a writer who gets in all kinds of trouble because of previous associations. So then, of course, I had to start earlier so that he had a past. Being a novelist is like being an anti-therapist. So you start with these characters and these things they do, and then you back up and give them damage.
Thanks very much, Barbara. It was interesting that you said that you got the germ of the idea of a man living in the McCarthy era, and then you had to invent the backstory. So you didn't start with the idea of writing about Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera and Trotsky, who also turns up.
He does, yes. Is that a question?
Yeah. Well, I was just interested. I mean, that's quite a backstory, isn't it, for anyone?
Well, yes, it was interesting to, historical fiction has its challenges, you know, but especially interesting to me was writing about characters who really lived, and characters who were very well known, whose lives were very well recorded. I couldn't just make this up, you know. It would be heretical, among other things, to do that. A historical novel requires, of course, immense research, and it's interesting to me that there seems to be represented well on this stage and in the world right now. A lot of interest in historical novels. I did begin with an idea, as you said, and I backed up, and I always do that. I begin with theme and then invent characters who will serve my plot. I never write about real people because real people are not cooperative enough. My narrator, my protagonists have to do exactly what I want, so, and as I said, they have to have the right kind of damage. So I invented a story to my liking, to serve my plot, and found myself, as I did the research, getting more and more involved with the people of the time. And I really considered Frida and Diego and Trotsky and Natalia, all of those people, as really more like setting than characters, because their lives are fixed, sort of the bars, the structure, I guess that's a better way to put it than the bars of a cage. Wasn't that bad. They were sort of the upright supports of the story, and then I wove my narrator through them, inventing relationships as I needed, but I was as faithful as I could possibly be to the truth of their lives, and so that dictated a lot of what happened. If Diego went to San Francisco on a certain date in real life, that's what he did in my novel. But it still gave me enough freedom. Once I thought of them as setting, that was very freeing.
Yeah.
But they also have to be interesting people,
Yeah, well, they certainly are, yes. One of the interesting things about the book was that I read it, I've talked to a lot of people who've read it, and what's interesting to me is that the ending, which is...
which we will not give away.
We will not give away, but I'm just going to say enough to make you think that some people, there is something that happens that you either spot or you don't spot. I, of course, spotted it.
Yeah, okay.
But some other people, very intelligent readers, didn't spot it, and I wondered how you felt about that ambiguity.
It surprised me. I felt very certain of what happened, and I hate a spoiler ending. I think there's a special place in hell for reviewers who give away endings or important plot points. But we can code it this way. I have heard a lot from readers and have ascertained there are two different kinds of readers, the optimists and the pessimists. Okay, now you know those of you, if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. I was very surprised. I thought it was, I'll put it this way, I'm an optimist. And at the same time, literature it's a joint venture. Some of my early readers did have a different interpretation of what happened at the end. They were pessimists, or they didn't spot, as you said. And I brought the lights up a little bit, which is what, I often do. Writing is walking a fine line between being too obvious, sort of bludgeoning people with what you mean, and being too obscure. Of course, it's all perfectly clear to me what happened, so I tend to err on the side of the obscure, and then I give it to readers, and they say, well, I'm completely lost, and so then you need to bring up the lights. So I brought up the lights a little on the ending to suggest what I believe happened, but I also think it's perfectly fine that some feel a different way. That's really what's so wonderful about literature, is that it's not mine. It belongs to every person who reads